laughter died in their throats as the thunderous roar of helicopter blades shattered the afternoon silence. What started as cruel mockery of a quiet girl in oversized camouflage was about to become a moment that would haunt these bullies forever. Sometimes, the people we underestimate carry stories that could break our hearts. And sometimes, those stories come looking for them. Full script. Sarah Mitchell sat alone at the far corner of Lincoln High's cafeteria, her small frame almost disappearing inside the faded Army combat uniform that hung loose on her shoulders. The other students had been whispering and pointing all morning, their cruel laughter echoing through the hallways like poison. "Look at the wannabe soldier," 16-year-old Brad Peterson sneered to his friends, his voice carrying across the crowded room. "Playing dress-up in Daddy's old clothes, thinking she's tough." The words cut through Sarah like shrapnel, but she kept her eyes down, methodically eating her sandwich while the storm of mockeries swirled around her. What these kids didn't know was that this wasn't dress-up, and those weren't her father's clothes. The uniform belonged to Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, Sarah's older sister, who had worn it through 3 tours in Afghanistan before an IED blast changed everything forever. Sarah had found the carefully folded fatigues in Maria's closet that morning, still smelling faintly of desert sand and the antiseptic of military hospitals. Today marked exactly 1 year since Maria had been declared missing in action, and Sarah wore the uniform not as a costume, but as a prayer, a desperate hope that somehow, some way, her sister might still find her way home. The fabric felt heavy with memories and dreams, each thread holding on to the last connection she had to the woman who had raised her after their parents died in a car crash when Sarah was just 8 years old. But how could she explain this to a cafeteria full of teenagers who saw only what they wanted to see? As the day wore on, the harassment intensified with each passing hour. During PE class, when Sarah struggled to keep up in her oversized boots, Coach Williams shook his head in disapproval. "This isn't Halloween, Mitchell," he barked, his voice echoing across the gymnasium. "Either dress appropriately or sit out." The other students erupted in laughter, their voices creating a symphony of cruelty that made Sarah's cheeks burn with shame. She wanted to scream, to tell them about Maria's Bronze Star, about the nights her sister had called home from Kabul with exhaustion in her voice but steel in her words. She wanted to tell them about the scholarship fund Maria had set up for military children, about the letters of gratitude from families whose sons and daughters came home safe because of Maria's bravery. Instead, Sarah bit her lip so hard she tasted blood, because some stories are too sacred to share with people who wouldn't understand their weight. By the time the final bell rang, Sarah felt like she was drowning in a sea of judgment and misunderstanding. She walked slowly toward the football field where she always waited for her aunt to pick her up, the autumn wind cutting through the thin fabric of the uniform. Behind her, she could hear Brad and his crew following, their voices growing bolder as they moved away from the school building. "Hey, soldier girl!" Brad called out, his words dripping with mock respect. "Where's your unit? Did they leave you behind because you're too weak?" The group gathered around her like vultures, their laughter sharp and merciless in the fading afternoon light. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to remember Maria's voice, the way her sister used to tell her that strength wasn't about fighting back. It was about knowing who you are when the whole world tells you you're nothing. That's when they heard it. A distant rumble that seemed to come from the very heavens themselves. The sound grew louder, deeper, until it felt like thunder rolling across the sky. The bullies stopped laughing, their heads turning upward as a massive Black Hawk helicopter appeared over the tree line, its rotors beating the air with mechanical precision. The aircraft descended slowly, deliberately, toward the center of the football field, kicking up clouds of dust and fallen leaves that swirled like a tornado around the frozen group of teenagers. Sarah's heart began to race, not with fear, but with a hope so desperate It made her legs shake beneath her. Could it be? After a year of silence, of wondering and praying and holding on to memories like lifelines, could it possibly be? The helicopter touched down with a gentle thud that seemed to shake the very ground beneath their feet. For a moment, everything was still except for the gradually slowing blades and the settling dust. Then the side door slid open and a figure emerged, tall, proud, moving with the unmistakable bearing of a soldier coming home. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos stepped onto the grass, her own uniform crisp and clean, her face searching the crowd until her eyes found exactly what she was looking for. The months of recovery, the surgeries, the physical therapy, the classified rescue mission that had kept her identity hidden, all of it faded away as she saw her little sister standing there in her old combat fatigues. The reunion wasn't just about family. It was about honor, about sacrifice, about the invisible threads that connect those who serve to those who wait. Brad Peterson and his friends stood frozen, their mouths open in shock as they watched Sarah run across the field and into her sister's arms. The embrace lasted forever, and not nearly long enough. Two sisters holding each other while the Black Hawk's engines cooled and clicked in the background. Maria pulled back just enough to look at Sarah's tear-streaked face, her own eyes shining with pride and understanding. "I told you I'd come home, little bird," she whispered, using the nickname she'd given Sarah years ago. "And I see you kept the uniform safe for me." The watching students began to understand, slowly and with growing shame, that they had been mocking something sacred. Someone who had been carrying more grief and love than any teenager should ever have to bear alone. As Maria signed autographs and shook hands with awestruck students and faculty members, sharing stories of service and sacrifice that transformed mockery into respect, Sarah realized that some of life's most powerful lessons come disguised as ordinary moments. The uniform that had made her a target had also brought her sister home, had shown her classmates that heroism doesn't always look the way we expect it to, and had proven that sometimes the people we underestimate are carrying the heaviest burdens with the greatest grace. The helicopter eventually lifted off, disappearing into the sunset, but the memory of that moment would live forever in the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. And Sarah Mitchell would never again face the world alone, because some bonds are stronger than distance, stronger than time, and stronger than the cruelest words anyone could ever speak.